Hey man, when you're trying to convince someone, what's your go-to strategy? Or what kind of conversation do you try to have? Today, I want to talk about a persuasion genius that you probably already know. And if you pay attention to his methods, you can forget about logic and still get what you want. Who am I talking about? None other than now US President Donald Trump. Now, if you don't understand persuasion, Trump's behavior might just seem dumb or straight up crazy. But if you do understand it, you'll realize that every single word he says is strategic. Scott Adams breaks this down in his book Win Bigly, and through it, we can really see Trump's persuasion techniques in action. Remember when Trump was running against Hillary Clinton and made that big promise to build a wall along the US-Mexico border? It sounded insane, right? Like, how do you build a wall across the entire border? The cost alone would be astronomical. A more reasonable solution would have been to set up high-tech surveillance or reinforce border security with fencing in key areas. If Trump had cared about technical accuracy, he would have said something like, "We need multiple strategies to secure our border, including fencing, digital monitoring, and other security measures." But nope, he just kept saying, "Build the wall." And what happened? The media and the public went nuts. They debated nonstop about whether it was possible or not. News outlets calculated the costs, experts criticized it, and people called Trump an idiot for suggesting it. But while they were all busy talking about how ridiculous the idea was, guess what became one of the hottest topics in the election? Border security. Here's the key. People tend to believe that whatever they think about the most must be important. Let me say that again. Irrationally, people assume that the thing they keep hearing and thinking about is a priority. Trump understood this perfectly. He knew a giant wall across the entire border wasn't realistic. But when he said wall, he wasn't just talking about a literal physical barrier. He was talking about a combination of fencing, surveillance, and security measures. He just didn't bother explaining that. Why? Because people were already fixated on the idea, so he let them do the work of keeping the conversation alive. Scott Adams sums up Trump's persuasion strategy like this. Make a statement that is directionally correct but factually exaggerated or even incorrect. Let people argue endlessly about how wrong it is. Because of human psychology, people will unconsciously start ranking that topic as more important than it actually is. Every time someone brought up the wall, Trump solidified his image as the guy who cares about national security and border control. Some people thought he was a fool, others thought he was dangerous, but one thing was certain. He owned the narrative. Here's the wild part. Once Trump actually became president, he softened his stance. Instead of deporting all illegal immigrants like he originally claimed, he focused on deporting criminals. Instead of building a massive wall along the entire border, he put up a few symbolic sections. And people actually felt relieved. Why? Because his original stance was so extreme that when he toned it down, it seemed like a reasonable compromise. This is a classic persuasion trick called anchoring. Start with an extreme position so that whatever you settle on later seems much more acceptable. Now let me teach you one last technique, something called the dominant advantages strategy. If you master this, your persuasion skills will level up instantly. Let's say someone criticizes you. Imagine they say, "Your side hasn't done anything to stop street violence." Most people would instinctively fire back with something like, "Well, your side hasn't done any better too." Sounds childish, right? Both sides end up looking dumb. But here's how you use the dominant advantages strategy instead. When they say, "Your side hasn't done anything to stop street violence," you respond with, "I completely agree. Thankfully, we've learned a lot from past mistakes. We've tried different approaches in various cities, and we've found some strategies that actually work. Now we're focused on implementing the best solutions and seeing if they can be expanded to other areas." Boom. Just like that, you've taken control of the conversation. The other person now looks like a whiny complainer, while you sound like a rational, forward-thinking leader. You've elevated the discussion, reframed the debate, and put yourself in a position of authority, just like Trump did when he ignored political correctness and focused on national security instead. By traditional media standards, Trump should have been disqualified from politics a long time ago. But he won the presidency not once, but twice. And with just a few tweets, he could shake global markets and dominate the news cycle. What I'm trying to say is, Trump isn't dumb. At least when it comes to persuasion, the guy is scary smart. People like to believe that humans are logical beings who occasionally act irrationally. But the truth? We are irrational beings who occasionally act logically. And if you understand that, you can influence the way people think, just like Trump did.